Hello, US 101 History Late Start class. I want to welcome you to another week, and we are moving along. As I mentioned, this class moves fast. We're coming up to the end in a few weeks, right? so, um, so first of all, if you're keeping up with the work, I congratulate you. If you're struggling and you're behind, I need you to contact me soon because uh, as it is right now, my late work policy, I'm going back to enforcing it. But I'm going to get harder on the late work cracking down on because I don't just take stuff dumped to me at the end of the semester. And if you feel like you're too far behind, any of you here and you're worried, I would talk to your counselor or contact me, or we can do both at the same time. And we can look over what's realistic for what's going on. Okay. So, having said that, as I mentioned, I got something fierce on my tummy, which started the evening that I took the train from Oregon to California, and we know how fun that can be. If any of you have experienced being sick on a public transportation, it's great. Anyways, so did that, and then I had to get a bunch of stuff situated because I'm living in both places. And with the gas prices, this is the most expensive move I've ever done so far. So yeah. Well, anyways, I got a little bit behind. I apologize for that. Here we are. I'm going to have Zoom office hours available normal as I have in the syllabus. I encourage you to talk with me if you want some help with something. And so, yeah, that's mainly it. I noticed some of you, I was a little late on grading some essays. And despite all the announcements that I've had, there's still this lingering resistance towards the citation rule. So every essay has to have citations, and it has to have it at the end of a paraphrase. And if you're still confused in this, please just go back, look at my old announcements, okay? But when it comes to the final essay, that's going to be, you're dead in the water. You know, you don't do the citations the way I ask, there's no points, okay? So I don't want you to go through that. And okay, so let's talk about just the summary of the material that we're covering. Very heavy stuff, okay? Very heavy stuff. First of all, heavy in terms of what we just covered, and then also thinking about where this leads us towards when we're moving into this week. So the westward expansion, it's what made the United States. It's why, right now I'm in Oregon. Last announcement I made was in Modesto. Both of these states were acquired by force. One was more or less a kind of harsh negotiation. If you remember reading about Oregon, basically there's a lot of names of streets around here that are named after Canadians that were the ones that were creating proto-Canada here, and then they got booted out with the British negotiation selling out their territory and the U.S. getting it. Okay, and of course the indigenous folks here were just kind of I don't say they're bystanders. They were active in what's dealing with this, but it was the two powers debating who gets to control the territory, and the indigenous folks were not getting concerned. There was no concern for that. Then, of course, if you're in California, you're in Modesto, so many cities named are Spanish: Los Angeles, San Diego, San Jose, Manteca, Los Baños, one of the great names of the towns around here, right? So this was all acquired through war, and again, you did some readings on the fact that indigenous folks were not passive bystanders. They were actively engaged. They just lost out as the conflict was over their land. And if you did the reading and you remember, and this is something that I even didn't really have much thought put into until I read this article and did some other research, that Native resistance in the Mexican-American War is to the point that it should be called the Mexican-American and Native War, maybe more specific to the tribes. It's not my expertise on that myself. But the article points out that part of the reason why Mexico may have lost in the war with the United States was partly because it was also being bogged down on another front with the indigenous resistance. So I forgot to turn off my cell phone if you heard that. Anyhow, so the Mexican-American War, as we see, is very important to understand, and the legacy of that is still with us. And when you go into US History 102, you see more where this comes up, even the way things play out with World War I. And the Zimmerman note, and there's other things I'm not going to go into detail now. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, okay, these are important things. And then, of course, we also talked about Irish defectors, the St. Patrick's Brigade, and all of that. Now, the important part to remember as we go into the next phase is slavery was always a divisive issue in the United States. You'll hear me say this many times. It was not a debate about racism. There was not a debate. It's a different debate than we have now. They both pretty much the United States had views that we would say are racist towards anybody that wasn't white. And actually, they even had racist views towards Irish people who are white. So there was a lot of different people. It was a time that was very people were very comfortable saying racist things. That goes all the way into popular culture. That's not me being overly sensitive and all that. This is just a fact. Okay, right? Okay. So, but there was a debate about slavery fiercely, and some of the debates were concerned about how people that were being enslaved were treated, and others were more or less worried about unfair competition for free labor versus somebody who's enslaved. And there wasn't really concerned about the enslaved at all. It was more or less feeling threatened that this was a disadvantage to them in the workplace and so on. So there was a wide range of these kind of issues, or employers that were feeling that they had a disadvantage of having to have free labor versus just an enslaved group. So, but ultimately, I would argue that there did become a strong moral component against the morality of enslaving people. And it was a cultural war that took place within Christianity. Christians were using the Bible on both sides to explain why they could justify or not justify slavery. We'll see later this week on how that plays out. And you see this very powerful and tragic documentary coming up off Nat Turner. Okay. But here's the thing that I want you to look also on the horizon. The United States takes this territory, more territory. Polk makes a big boom, okay? Some people will tell you we're going to debate the morality of President Polk, but the success in terms of grabbing and taking land through force and attaining a wide swath of land, well, he's a success story on that end, if you just look at that, okay, if that's your barometer for success. But what it did is it ripped open the slavery question, because there keeps being this debate. Which states will be free? Which ones will have slavery? And you get all this territory. And now everybody's quickly trying to scramble to see, the settlers are coming in. And what you're going to see is settlers are going to come into a territory with the exact purpose of trying to make it a non-slave state and others a slave state. You can see so much up to the build up to the Civil War in our culture building around slavery. And I'm going to finish this soon, but I want to point out, you're going to see, I'm going to make this very clear. And I'm not nuanced on this because there isn't nuance. The Civil War was about slavery. You're going to see that. There isn't any other reason why the Civil War took place. There's other tensions that took place between the South and the North. There were tariff issues that took place in the past. And no doubt there was a cultural divide in many ways. But Americans were killing each other over the slavery issue even before the Civil War. And the Civil War, the people who are going to participate in it, the southern states that are going to leave, you're going to see this clearly. They all say it's for slavery, nothing else. And for some folks, it's going to be they're going to be like, no, that can't be true. No, there's no alternative explanation. And I will cover this thoroughly for anybody that has this doubt once we get up to the Civil War. And I will just be honest about this. I didn't have this clear of an understanding until I was challenged by somebody on whether or not it was ambiguously or unambiguously an issue over slavery. And I didn't have a lot of answers. And then I listened to some folks try to make alternative theories, and they completely bypassed, ignored the documents that are out there. And they still do this. But yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. So, but that's where we're building up to. And now you're seeing this precursor. You're seeing slave revolt. Enslaved people were not just passive. Nat Turner's rebellion is a good example. And it's gruesomely violent. It's the question of also, though, if somebody enslaves you, do they get to mention the terms of how violent? In other words, you're told that you have no autonomy of your body. You have complete control over your body. If you have a child, they get to take it. But hey, how dare you resist against us by doing something like kill us or our own kids? So this is a hot mess. It's a very toxic situation. It's very right. And then we're going to see more with John Brown coming up, and it's a very powerful part of this whole discussion that really just is the powder keg into moving forward into this tragic history that we have in our country. So if anybody has any questions on that, please contact me. I won't get mad or upset. You could totally disagree with me. We'll have a civil discussion about it and, see where it goes from there. But I'll leave it at that. I hope you're all having a good week, and we'll be in touch.